What's going on, guys? Welcome into the Blitz Podcast. I'm going to spare you the whole we went on a hiatus, we're back spiel that usually is done after we take a month and a half break for no real reason, and just say today we're recording a mock draft episode. This is our fourth mock draft. We couldn't work a mock draft Monday in, so we're going to do a mock draft Tuesday, which sounds equally as good. Me and Mitchell are going to be here today. Mitchell, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. Things have been busy with us, school, frat, life in general. It's just been a busy time for all of us. So we're keeping afloat and putting out pods whenever we can. And it's spring break right now for me. So what better way to celebrate than a mock draft?
Yeah, and we know, as I'm sure we've talked about in the past, Mitchell's schedule is very, very, very full. So we should all be extremely thankful that we were able to get some of his time today and get some of that superior football knowledge that he brings to the Blitz Pod. I don't know where we would be without him. Well, also, I don't know if there's any big injury guys in this class that we'll need some analysis on. So
Hendon, but
yeah,
I don't know if Hendon Hooker's going to be
guy though, aren't you?
I like Hendon. I like him. He's probably turn of the second, in my opinion, unless somebody's way head over heels on him.
Yeah. All right, so with that being said, I think we should get started. And after the trade that was made about a week or so ago, the Carolina Panthers are going to be on the clock here at number 1, and all the buzz is pointing to it being between C.J. Stroud and Bryce Young here at number 1, and I think obviously the size is what's holding it up for Bryce Young. C.J. Stroud had a fantastic combine, threw very well there. So, and I don't know if I mentioned this, but we're going to be doing this war room style, so it's not going to be I pick for one team, Mitchell picks for the next pick, and we just alternate like that. We're going to try and do this collaboratively, and it's going to be a mix of predictive and what we would do. So, obviously, I don't know about you, but if I'm picking at number 1, I'm picking Bryce Young, and I'm moving on. But the buzz in Carolina right now is that they like Stroud, so we're going to at least give Bryce Young some consideration. We're going to give C.J. Stroud consideration and hopefully come to a consensus. So what are your thoughts here at number 1 about what they're going to do?
Well, I think we're on the first page, first of all, that Bryce Young is probably the better quarterback. He just showed out every year he's been at Alabama. This year, much less talent around him. And he was still generating some Heisman buzz, even though it wasn't quite a front runner. But he just has it. He's a great processor, makes all the throws. He's athletic. And C.J. Stroud, in the same breath, he is an amazing passer. He's accurate, but you have to wonder how much could be attributed to his generational type receivers that have been around him, and JSN, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, and Marvin Harrison Jr., who looks like the next prodigy, maybe top 5 pick next year at this point. And you just can't separate him from what he's been around. And Bryce Young separated himself from what he had last year in Mechie and Jameson Williams and still looked amazing this year. But with that being said, I think I might be bigger than Bryce Young personally, and I'm not a large human being. And in the NFL, watching what's happened with Tua this year, I think there's going to be a lot of injury buzz around him because Tua's taken a lot of injuries. He hadn't had a full healthy season, and Bryce Young is even smaller than Tua. So I think the NFL is going to have more buzz around C.J. Stroud as the top guy, but personally, I take Young. But I'm not Carolina, and since we're doing half predictive, I think it's going to be Stroud as well.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to go Stroud here as well. I think a lot of people, and you made a great point about the comparison to Tua, because a lot of people like to scout the jersey. Oh, look at the last Alabama quarterback that came out, or just Mac Jones didn't happen. And Tua was small, and maybe if he didn't have those concussion injuries on primetime television this year like he did, I feel like this would be less of a conversation right now about what we're going to do here at number 1. But because that happened, and like you said, he's smaller than Tua is, we're having a much different conversation. I think if Bryce Young is 6'4", 230, something like that, he's going into that Trevor Lawrence, Andrew Luck class of prospect that we see very rarely. But I think Carolina is kind of locked in on C.J. Stroud. The fact that he's in the conversation makes me think that that's where they're leaning. So That's what we're going to do here at number 1. The Panthers, with the number 1 pick that they moved up for, will be taking C.J. Stroud, which moves us to number 2 with the Houston Texans that absolutely sold the number 1 pick by winning in the last week of the season. Phenomenal gamesmanship there by Lovie Smith to just, you know what, you're going to fire me. I'm going to screw you guys over. And lo and behold, that's exactly what he did. Just quick disclaimer. I know you and I talked about this before we started. Do not be surprised if Houston calls Carolina, a couple days before the draft and is like, look, we know that you're between C.J. Stroud and Bryce Young. We're locked on Bryce Young. Let us make that decision for you. We'll throw you a second-round pick, something like that, and we'll just move up to 1. Texans take Bryce Young, and the Panthers take C.J. Stroud. And I may have just a little bit gave away what we're going to be doing here at number 2. I mean, for me, it's Bryce Young. I don't know about you. What do you got to say?
I think it's got to be Bryce Young. If any team in this top 5 has the offensive line to keep him upright and healthy, it's the Texans. They just made a move too for Shaq Mason. They're building around it. They just got Dalton Schultz today as well. This is going to be a confident offense, and if you get a guy like Bryce Young in, he can make an immediate impact. And if they are so happen to be stuck not being able to pick Bryce Young, I think Houston would be potentially looking to next year, because it's going to be a stat class next year. That might be a talk of discussion throughout this podcast, because kind of like last year, everybody was looking for Stroud and Young this year. It's grass is always greener next year, apparently. But with Caleb Williams coming in next year, there's going to be a lot of teams tempted to maybe trade out of where they're at, maybe build up some capital for next year and try to make that push, because he's truly going to be in that type of Trevor Lawrence, Peyton Manning discussion with Caleb Williams. But if Bryce Young falls to the Texans, I think there's no way they pass on him this year.
Yeah, and like you said about last year, I remember the day of the draft, I put out a mock draft that had the Panthers going Kenny Pickett at 6, and now here they are, albeit they traded up, but here they are picking at number 1, and they're going to go and potentially get their guy in C.J. Stroud. And the Eagles are another example of that, where they had 3 first-round picks last year. They had abundance of assets. They hedged. They traded one of those to the Saints, and now they're picking in the top 10 because of it. And oddly enough, this was because they were unsure about the future with Jalen Hurts. He goes on and is probably finishes second in MVP voting, leads them to a Super Bowl, and now that's not really a conversation anymore. But just kind of funny how that works. But yeah, Caleb Williams is going to be that guy. We'll talk a little bit about Caleb Williams with our next pick. I know that doesn't make a whole lot of sense right now, but it will in a second. Yeah, I've got the Texans going Bryce Young here. If Bryce Young isn't available, they're definitely moving out, in my opinion. I just feel like you cannot use this number 2 pick on anybody but Bryce Young. Our first 2 mock drafts we did when who was picking at number 1? Oh, we had the Colts moving up to get Bryce Young. So the Texans didn't have him there, and we had them taking Will Anderson once, and then we had him taking Jalen Carter another time. And a lot of people were like, what the hell are you doing? Why would they not be taking a quarterback next year? I was like, look, man, if it's not Bryce Young, I feel like it can't be anybody, because even though they've made some, sizable improvements, Dalton Schultz, Shaq Mason, Devin Singletary, they're kind of loading up this offense a little bit. I still think they're going to be towards the bottom of the standings next year if they don't take a quarterback, and you'll be able to get the Caleb and Drake May and all that shit. So luckily, though, Bryce Young is available for them, so that's what we're going to be picking here. And that takes us to number 3 with the Arizona Cardinals. Now, this has become a very popular move-out spot because now that the Panthers are up there, you got to imagine they go 1-2 quarterbacks, and Cardinals don't need a quarterback. Kyler Murray did tear his ACL last year. He probably, didn't. Who knows when he's going to be back? But you can't really see them taking a quarterback here. And the reason why I think it's very interesting of what they're going to do here is because if they're really bad next year, which could be a real possibility with no Kyler Murray, likely no DeAndre Hopkins, just Buda Baker on defense because you let Byron Murphy walk and J.J. Watt retired, and
Zach
you've
Allen
drafted
walked.
linebackers. Yeah, you've drafted linebackers in back-to-back years.
So is this the Bijan Robinson pick?
Oh yeah. Pull the linebacker out of the second round. Trenton Simpson, come on down. I think it's going to be interesting next year, and we'll get to the pick in a second. But I've said to like specifically a lot of Ravens fans that were like, oh well, if we lose Lamar, we'll just suck next year and we'll get Caleb Williams. We'll trade up for Caleb Williams. There is not a single team in the NFL that's going to have the number 1 pick next year and trade out, with the exception of the Arizona Cardinals, because the Cardinals have a chance. They could very well be picking at number 1 next year, and if they are picking at number 1 next year, they have a very tough decision to make on, do we want to pay Kyler Murray, who's coming off of an ACL injury, who uses his mobility a lot, $45 million over the next 4 years with our roster not in a space to compete, or anywhere near that, by the way? Or do we want to get the guy on a rookie contract who was, arguably a better prospect than Kyler, and move on from Kyler? It's gonna be interesting, and obviously this is a year away and could very well not even happen. I just thought it was an interesting thing to bring up. But here at 3, spoiler alert, we're not gonna have them moving out. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Vegas signed a quarterback, so with that being said, I just can't imagine they'd move up. Now, could they take a quarterback at 7, depending on what happens over the next couple picks? Absolutely. But I can't see them moving up to get a guy with Jimmy G still on the roster. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And then I know we talked about this prior to us starting here. Tennessee was a team that we thought about, but they don't really have the assets to do so. And then if you're the Cardinals at 3, if you move from 3 to 7, you can still get like a Will Anderson, a Jalen Carter, a Tyree Wilson. If you move down to 11, you're really jumping down a tier in prospect, and you're not going to be able to get the talent level that you could at 7. So I'm just going to toss it over to you. What are your thoughts on Cardinals at 3 here?
Yeah, I want to kind of touch on like the quarterback debate you had earlier. I mean, this is the team that gave up on Josh Rosen a year after taking him. And Caleb Williams might be next level, and this roster is absolutely nowhere near contending. They have a bad offensive line. They're going to have pretty much Rondale Moore and Marquise Brown, and 2 solid tight ends, surprisingly. So receiving threats are there, but crappy offensive line, crappy defensive line, crappy corners, Buda Baker, a bunch of wasted linebacker picks. This team is nowhere near ready to contend. And I think they're going to probably encourage Kyler to take his time coming back so they can at least get a better pick if he comes back late in the year. But if they find themselves at 1, I think Kyler Murray might be getting shopped for anything possible, because Caleb Williams is definitely a better prospect than what Kyler Murray was coming out. Even though Kyler was kind of undisputed at 1, he's no Caleb Williams. And like I mentioned, this roster is pretty much devoid of talent outside of receiving threats. So it's pretty much a debate between Will Anderson and Jalen Carter's off the field issues. And I think most teams in the NFL, if they were in this situation, are going to say, we need to take the safer guy, the guy with all the good character, none of the off the field issues. And that's Will Anderson. He checks all the boxes.
Yeah, I agree. I think if you're Arizona and you've decided, we're staying at 3, you got 3 options. It's Will Anderson, Jalen Carter. I think Tyree Wilson starting to put himself in that conversation, but Tyree Wilson's more of the upside play. Jalen Carter is more of a sure thing on the field, but he's not a sure thing off the field. Will Anderson is the best of both worlds, in my opinion. I think he's phenomenal. I remember very, very poorly photoshopping him into a Steelers jersey when about week 9, when we were 2-6 or 2-7.
I remember that one.
That's a classic, isn't it? And I think one of the main reasons that Arizona needs to stay here and specifically take Will Anderson is you need good players. Like we talked about how poor this roster is. Like, it would be nice to trade out and get 3 more lottery tickets or whatever, but you can stay here and get a guy who, hopefully is an edge rusher for you for the next 10 or 15 years and be a very good one at that, in a division where, you've got a team like the Niners, who might have a quarterback eventually, whether it be Trey Lance, Brock Purdy, or fucking Sam Darnold. You got Matt Stafford still there, and the Seahawks apparently have Geno. So you will have, if Aaron Donald retires soon, I don't know, Nick Bosa's there. We'll cut that out maybe. Yeah. I don't know. Who knows? All right, Cardinals picking Will Anderson.
Good pick.
Which leaves us with the Colts on the clock here. the position we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on. The position is quarterback.
Yeah,
the player is what we're going to spend a lot of time on here, and it's really down to Anthony Richardson and Will Levis. You and I are partial to a certain quarterback from the southern state of Florida. So I'll just kick it to you for just any real analysis other than what I just said.
I mean, Will Levis is probably more the prototypical quarterback you would look for, but he did have a rough year last year, granted behind probably one of the worst offensive lines in college football,
with
pretty much devoid of receiving talent.
Yeah.
Yeah, horrible. Once he lost Wandale, he had pretty much nothing going for him. But at the same time, he flashed last year, and I can understand the buzz around him. And he is kind of a tradesy quarterback that Chris Ballard would look for in the front office of Indy. And they have to nail the quarterback pick. And with Anthony Richardson there, even with him being a one-of-one athlete, probably even ahead of Cam Newton at this point in terms of athleticism, he's just been so spotty. He's only had 13 career starts. He's not polished by any means. You would have to make him a project type of quarterback. And in the NFL, you utilize legs until they finally figure it out. But at the same time, you can produce winning teams like that. Lamar Jackson's first year pretty much never made him pass. And then we look at Jalen Hurts as well when he stepped in for Carson Wentz. They didn't have an offense ready for him right off the bat, so they capitalized off his legs. You can win with Anthony Richardson as your starting quarterback. And if he goes to Indy, he's going to be that without Matt Ryan there. It's all but a foregone conclusion. And I just like what Anthony Richardson can do better. He can provide on the ground, even if you don't think he's going to have a good arm. And he can win for the next 5 years for you on his legs. He's a big guy. His injury risk is less of that of like Lamar Jackson. You don't have to worry as much about him being small and more fragile. I think they could win now with him and then hope that he develops as a passer, because he has the flashes of making perfect passes and having perfect mechanics. It's just wildly inconsistent at this point.
Yeah, and we're both leaning AR here at 4. The one drawback that I will say is that the perfect situation that you would want for Anthony Richardson is for him to come in behind an established starting quarterback. You know, we look at the next couple picks: Geno Smith, Jared Goff, Jimmy Garoppolo. 3 literally perfect examples of who you'd be like, yep, we're going to sit him behind this guy. We don't feel too attached to him, so we can bring him in whenever we want, but we don't want him to start right away. The Colts don't have that. They cut Matt Ryan the other day, and it's just going to be kind of a situation where you're like, man, we've really got to throw him out there day one and just hope for the best. However, they don't really have a choice because they cut Matt Ryan, and we saw the Sam Ehlinger experiment, and I feel
NFL vet Sam Ehlinger.
Yeah.
He can sit behind him.
Yep. The thing with Levis is I feel like they both have the same kind of issues. I think Levis is a much better passer. Obviously, Anthony Richardson, much better athlete, but the ceiling is a lot higher with the Colts. And, you know, we've seen this formula of like, you've got a really good running back there, so you can run this read option stuff all day long. Like Jonathan Taylor, that's going to be deadly, and you're probably not going to be throwing the ball a whole lot with AR plus that receiving core. Yeah, they're going to be a 30, 35 rushing attempts a game type of team next year, but we're going to put Anthony Richardson here to Indianapolis.
And I like that pick because Chris Ballard probably has a very, very short leash, and he needs to win now. And as much as Levis has an upside similar to Richardson, his upside can't win you this year. He's not the athlete that AR has. He's going to need the time to develop at QB, and I think Ballard's got to be desperate to save his own butt at this point and win now.
And honestly, like with this pick, the ceiling for them this year is much lower than it is with Levis. I think if you get Levis and like the variance of if you bring Levis in, I think Levis could win you 12 games on dude. If Levis comes in and he's like on the high end of variance, they could win 11 or 12 games. On the low end, it's probably about the same as Anthony Richardson at like 4 or 5. I think the high end, again, just this year for Anthony Richardson is probably like 7 or 8, just because you're not going to want to pass the ball with him. I think Levis, you'll pass the ball with a little bit, and if you, like I said, if you get the high end of the variance, you get all the good stuff going your way, they'll probably win more games this year than they would if Anthony Richardson is like as good as you'd hoped he'd be. But moving forward, I think it's AR. Moving forward to Seattle at number 5. This is Denver's pick. And they just locked up Geno, so I know that you like the quarterback here, but AR's already gone. What are we thinking here? We've got Jalen Carter on the board. We've got Tyree Wilson on the board. We've got Devon Witherspoon, Christian Gonzalez. We've also got Will Levis still here. What are you thinking?
Receivers. The only quarterback I feel like they could go the project route with Levis. It's just they're definitely more in win now at the moment. And I think they buy in more to the AR athleticism type of peak to his ceiling than the Will Levis. Even though Levis has a high ceiling as well, I just think they'd rather have the athlete at this point. And I think they need to win now. They might. I'm between whether or not they actually trust Carter and his off the field issues and maybe Devon Witherspoon to match up opposite of Tariq Woolen and just lock down that secondary because Jamal Adams is coming back. That could be a lethal secondary. But the interior of their defense is rough. I think they just lost Poona Ford as well. And they have a decent depth at edge rusher. Tyree Wilson is a little bit different than everybody else they have. He is so much longer than Uchenna and Boye Mafe that he would be a complete different element in the run game, completely shutting people down. But I think this might just be the spot where a team's willing to say, Jalen Carter, we trust you to right your wrongs at this point. And it could very easily pay off big time for them.
Yeah, and the thing is with that is Seattle has been known to do that, where they take the chance on the guy with a little bit of off-field issues, and the culture that they have there usually turns it around. And, you know, sometimes it doesn't work out, but that you can point to any player, really, that has ever been drafted with off-field issues, and sometimes it just doesn't work out. But Seattle's a team I'd feel comfortable taking that risk with. They do need help on the interior. I thought about for like a split second, like, hey, you know, kind of in a similar situation to like Detroit, what if they're like, man, what if we move down here for one of these teams that want a quarterback, hedge a little bit, get an asset next year just because they're probably not going to be that bad next year, but who knows, because no one thought they would be this good this year. And like, you know, there's a chance that Geno Smith is just like Geno Smith next year. He's, you know, this year maybe was just like, wow, look at this, everything started to really great, and we saw it towards the end of the season where he kind of started to tail off a little bit. He wasn't as good at the beginning of the season, and we started to see a little bit more Geno Smith coming in than what we, you know, seen from him in the first couple weeks. But I think Jalen Carter is the pick here, would be in the consideration for number 1 prior to the off-field issues and prior to the Bears trading out of it. Yeah, Jalen Carter here at 5 for Seattle, and now we're here with Detroit at 6. So they are kind of in a weird spot because Will Anderson's gone, Jalen Carter's gone. Those are the 2 blue chip defensive prospects, and then the top 3 quarterbacks are gone. You've just got Levis left, and then you're like thinking, do we go Tyree Wilson? Do we go corner? What do you think here at 6?
They just stacked up at corner. I like it, but
because you're probably if you're
is
Detroit,
Will Levis a guy they'd be in on? Like, I get the upside, but at the same time they need to stack now or maybe look to next year.
Yeah,
like
because I was about to say, so
up.
you're either thinking, so you got 3 options. Obviously, you've got take a defender, which would be like you could go with a DB. You've kind of stacked that room a little bit. You got Okudah. Sutton can play outside. He played outside some in Pittsburgh whenever we needed him to. And then you move Chauncey Gardner-Johnson down to slot corner, or you move him back up to safety and you put Sutton at slot.
They got Mosley too.
Yeah, and they got Emmanuel Mosley too. You're right. So DB's probably out here. Tyree Wilson is a thing. He's the prospect, or like he's like the Trayvon Walker of this year, if you want to call it that. He's the traitsy edge rusher that keeps climbing up the boards. And then you've got trade out.
Who's desperate enough?
Teams that won't quit, because you've got like you're in the prime spot to trade out. All of the 2 blue chips are gone. The team right behind you, you've got to imagine the league, in league circles, you're hearing them talk about quarterback in the Las Vegas Raiders. Looking down the board, I can't see Atlanta. I mean, maybe, but I doubt it. Chicago, no. Philly, no. Tennessee is definitely a thought. We mentioned them with Arizona, but they don't really have assets. Do they want to do that? Then Houston got a quarterback. Jets going to get Rodgers. Patriots, no. Packers, no. Jordan Love. Commanders could be a thing here. And I mean,
they are running with Sam Howell.
Yeah, I was about to say, and I feel like past this, you're really like, you're not like the Bucks at 19 are there, but they signed Baker. The Commanders are interesting because clearly, as at this moment, all signs indicate that they are going to be rolling with Sam Howell at quarterback next year. And if they do that, now we've also heard Dan Snyder and that whole ownership group, they're about to be gone. So we're going to be seeing new ownership probably within this offseason. Ron Rivera is coming up on year 4 or 5? Something.
It's got to be a shaky season.
Something close to that. And you've made 1 playoff appearance. You were 7-10 that year, or 7-9, whatever, in that playoff appearance. You have not exceeded that record since then, and you're rolling into next year with your 5th-round rookie who played 1 game and was good. Don't get me wrong, was good against a good Dallas team that was playing their starters. Like, it wasn't like they sat everybody and he went off. He played well against a good Dallas team. But do you want to, as Ron Rivera, as whatever their GM's name is, roll into next year and be like, yep, we're putting everything on what we saw in this 1 game in Week 18 from our 5th-round rookie, and if this doesn't work, we're probably fired because new ownership's coming in, and, well, you guys sucked. We're going to bring in a new quarterback next year, for sure, if Sam Howell isn't good, and goodbye. Here's the door. Or do you want to, you know what, let's push the chips in towards the table. We see, like, the Bears a few years ago did it with Justin Fields. Obviously, that did not work out with Matt Nagy and, God, I can't remember their GM's name. Poles is their GM now.
No. I don't know.
Yeah. You guys have Google. They both got fired. Even though Fields wasn't the greatest in year 1, I think he missed some time with injury as well. But the other thing is, does Washington, and I know we're talking about Detroit here at 6, but Washington, do they maybe shoot an offer to Lamar because he's there? You're not picking in the top 5 to the point where you'd be like, yeah, we don't really want to give up this pick and a pick next year and $250 million. You're picking in the middle of the draft. You're still giving up $250 million and next year's pick. But I don't know, because you got to think they're paying Daron Payne. They're going to have to pay Jonathan Allen. They drafted Montez Sweat in the same year in the 1st round that they did Jonathan Allen, so they're going to have to pay him. And then Chase Young's right after that. Obviously, they don't have to pay all those guys, Terry. But that's like, yeah, and you're paying Terry, but that is your identity right now, is that defensive line. That's like the thing you've got going for you. The linebackers are meh. The DBs are meh. The wide receivers are good. And, provided other than Terry, you don't have to pay Jahan Dotson anytime soon. They've already paid Curtis Samuel. I don't know when his contract expires. The offensive line has just a bunch of average players on it. There's no, above average. There's no below average, just straight average.
I
feel like
they're going to need to stay cheap to afford that defensive
I feel like
line.
You've got to take this shot, man. If you're the Commanders, you can move up to 6 here.
Even keep 3 out of 4 of the guys. It would cost almost $20 million a year for those type of players.
Even if you're looking at Montez Sweat and being like, well, he's our number 2 edge rusher. Do we want to pay him? Some team will pay Montez Sweat to be their number 1 edge rusher. Some team will pay him upwards of 15, probably closer to 20 million to come in and be their number 1 guy. And after paying Jonathan Allen, after paying Daron Payne, after paying to plan Chase Young, you cannot do that for Montez Sweat. So he might just be a casualty of this whole thing.
Trade. Yeah, the Lions could use a guy to throw in the rotation because I feel like anybody on Washington's defensive line would be better on defender than James Houston. They don't really have the outside presence for it other than Hutch.
Yeah. Okay. So
let me go to the calculator.
Old trade value chart. Nice.
Sorry about the dog. So what are we thinking? We throw in one of the defensive linemen so they don't have to pay and can get away with the rookie QB contract?
I feel like Sweat would be the guy that you let go of because, like, even though he's good, he's still going to be demanding top-ish money, and he's not as good as Chase Young when Chase Young is healthy. Now, I feel like part of the reason why Detroit would want to do this is because they're hedging a little bit. You know, this is a free pick for them at 6, and if they're not going quarterback this year, you're really going to be thinking about it next year because you got Caleb Williams, all those players in there. And I know we talked about how nobody's going to be trading out, but if on the off chance Arizona is there, you want to be able to have that flexibility, kind of like what Philly did, where they had the extra draft picks. They moved one of them and got an extra pick next year, and it kind of panned out. It really did pan out for them. Hurts, they didn't even have to use it on a quarterback, and they're still picking at the top 10. But we did want to move Montez Sweat. So is there any way we could, like... All right, here's what I'm thinking. So the Commanders send 16 first-round pick next year and Montez Sweat for Detroit 6 and then 48 in this year's draft.
Of this year.
So a first and a second for 2 firsts and Montez Sweat.
So let me check out the values. So Detroit's 1,600, over 2,000. Washington's at 1,000 for their 1.
And you got to imagine
they'll probably be picking
that's a middle
right
first round pick. That's going to be
year.
about 1,000 because I mean obviously we don't know what end of the spectrum they're going to be on.
And then whatever Sweat's worth, you got to add in the fact that they are trading up for QB.
Yeah,
which inflates it a little bit more than what the value sheet would be.
Yeah, and this is a big drop. Like 6 to 16, you're going from Tyree Wilson to potentially, like, if there's a big run on edge, you're looking at Nolan Smith. You might miss the corner run. I know that I think maybe market might miss the tackle run.
I think they might hold Sweat for a little more just because they know his talent. Maybe Minnesota's second this year and third next year that they got in trade. Just because it might be more. They stack the rotation. They still get the earlier pick, and then they get 2 firsts next year.
So it would be 16 round 1 and Sweat for 6.55 and
Minnesota's third next year, which is probably
Commanders are
if
moving,
I had to guess.
The Commanders are moving up. So if we're doing the quarterback, we really might need to pick up the pace here. I've lost all motivation to cut things out of the podcast. I like everyone to understand that we're trying to move faster than going through 6 picks in 30.
So 155 adds into the 350 as opposed to the 420. They can still get a really good guy at 48. I don't mind that. Or we could try to, because I don't know if your PFF simulator is showing that Washington's not interested to move up at the moment or not either.
They are showing it for me. So
okay, mine wasn't showing it, so I'd have to force it regardless.
So let's stick with 16 round 1 Montez Sweat for 6.55. I think that's fair. Both sides. Detroit gets to hedge a little bit. They move back. They also add an edge player who, Montez Sweat, I know you got to pay him soon, but he might be better than a Tyree Wilson that you can get here. Plus, the first round pick you'll be picking later and next year. And then Washington, you get your seat at the table here and pick your quarterback in Will Levis. This is a huge Kane Schwartz moment as the Kentucky quarterback goes to his beloved Washington Commanders. And he said over and over again that he does not want that to happen because obviously the Commanders have not had too much success in the quarterback department in the last 60 years. So it is what it is. But we'll if there's like any small details we need to hammer out a little bit later, we can do that. So we're going to have the Washington Commanders moving up here. Let me please don't mind what I'm doing right now. Can you talk or something? Just like say anything.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter.
I'm trying to fill it in right now. Yeah, the Commanders are probably definitely going to try to keep capitalizing off a rookie quarterback contract because they do have a solid roster around them. They'll probably need corners and stuff later in this draft, which they'll have a chance to do. This is a deep class to fill in a void for that, and then hopefully land some like later offensive tackles and stuff like that. But they have the receiving weapons to make a run right now. You have Samuel, you have Dotson, and you have Terry. This is a good offense. And Robinson and Gibson are a solid rushing attack, not amazing. But if Levis actually hits on this, they could compete for a wild card spot. I don't know if they'll win the division, but Rivera needs to kind of save his own ass right now. If he has a good quarterback and they can win 9 to 10 games this year, he could just extend his time there in Washington by pulling this off. And with a new ownership, they're probably going to want to push to be good now. And this would be the time to do it. You do what you need to do to get a quarterback this year.
Yeah, for sure. And you went out and you got Jacoby Brissett, and that was kind of a measure for, I guess, you'd imagine Sam Howell, or maybe he's just a backup, and that's just what it is. But you can start
on top of it.
You can start Brissett if you need to first couple weeks, just so he can learn behind a guy who's played in 100 different systems throughout his career and develop him. So
I also don't think this team's going to be bad enough to be in position to trade up next year.
Yeah,
because they're always going to be like a 7-win team regardless.
Mm-hmm. Just that, the defensive line, as long as they stay healthy, scrappy, they're going to be there. But yeah, this could very well save Ron Rivera's job. And it's like, obviously, if you're a new owner, like we saw it, I know this is a basketball reference, but in the NBA with Phoenix, they got a new owner. About 2 weeks later, the trade deadline was coming up, and he walks in and is like, "Oh, we're not going to get Kevin Durant because we don't want to give up Mikal Bridges. What the hell are we doing right now? Get Kevin Durant." And like, while you do see that, like Lamar, I think could very well be in play here, but getting a rookie quarterback at number 6, it's a lot more marketable too than Sam Howell. So, yeah, Commanders going Will Levis at 6. Moving on, Raiders stuck out in the cold here. They do not have a quarterback. They do have Jimmy Garoppolo, however, which, if they didn't get Jimmy Garoppolo, they would probably be talking to Arizona. They'd be talking to Seattle. They'd be talking to Detroit. They're going to be trying to get up here because they'd be rolling into next year without a quarterback on the roster, if I'm not mistaken, because Carr's gone. Not Peterman. Fucking goddamn, what the hell? Stidham. Jarrett Stidham.
Stidham.
Yeah.
Other guy.
He
Different
went to
backup.
Denver. So they're very lucky to get Jimmy Garoppolo. But they've still got some options here. You've got all the corners: Devon Witherspoon, Christian Gonzalez, Deontay Banks, Joey Porter. You've also got Tyree Wilson here.
I'm definitely looking DB.
DB is kind of where I'm at too. They saw some nice things from Nate Hobbs 2 years ago, but I think he had some injuries this past season. He's a slot guy as well, so the value's a little bit lower there. I could definitely see Devon Witherspoon here at 7 for the Raiders. I think that makes a lot of sense. I don't know about you. What do you think?
Him or Gonzalez. It's whether or not they want the feisty guy or the freak athlete guy in Gonzalez. Because Gonzalez is borderline 1-1 in his build.
Well, if this was happening 2 years ago, I think Christian Gonzalez is the hands-down obvious pick under Mike Mayock and John Gruden's staff.
This could be like a Sauce Gardner versus Stingley. Stingley had the high of highs, like Witherspoon last year, one pass given up in press coverage, versus the freak athlete guy who did great all year. Sauce had a great
that's
year.
That's the thing with that last year's class, man, and that's why I loved Stingley so much. Was like, not only was he the freak athlete, but he also had the "I'm the best corner alive" season in his freshman year. Yeah. And like, God, I can't believe I got that. I wouldn't say I got that wrong, but I just can't see a world where he ends up being better than Sauce Gardner, who's already, in the top 2 or 3 of the corners in the NFL.
Top 5, if not top 2.
Yeah.
I think they might go with the athlete.
Really?
The
Okay.
NFL loves athletes, and Witherspoon is not exactly massive, but he plays with passion.
Hmm.
I think they might just go with Gonzalez for the athleticism upside.
Okay. All right. So Christian Gonzalez for the Raiders here at 7. That's not how you spell his name. Um,
Ooh.
Moving on to number 8 with the Atlanta Falcons. Now, they kind of, I wouldn't say have similar needs. They also need a second corner to go alongside AJ Terrell. If, let's say, we go Devon Witherspoon here, you're talking about probably one of the 2 or 3 best secondaries in the NFL with AJ Terrell, Devon Witherspoon, Jesse Bates, Richie Grant. That's a very good group.
Still Casey Hayward too,
Casey Hayward
temporarily.
is alive still. And on the flip side of that, one of the worst groups in the league has been Atlanta's pass rush. I remember
Or
mocking them pass rush last year, and even this year as
and
well. Tyree Wilson is still available, and I think there's a big drop off as far as edge talent goes. What do you think about Atlanta here at 8?
Yeah, I'm turning in the card for Wilson. They are so bad up front. They just get run over on the interior, and they need somebody on the line.
Yeah,
I think it's Tyree.
I'm with you there. All right, so Tyree Wilson to Atlanta. Now Chicago is up here at number 9. They moved back from number 1. They acquired. We didn't really talk about the trade when we were doing Carolina's pick, so we can talk about it right now. Obviously, Chicago moves back from 1 to 9. They acquire number 9. They acquire, I believe, number 61 in the second round. They acquire a first-round pick next year, a second-round pick in 2025, and wide receiver DJ Moore. Wide receiver was going to be one of their biggest needs coming into this offseason. They addressed that. And I was sitting there thinking about it earlier, man. Like, Carolina gave up a first-round pick, another first-round pick, 2 second-round picks, and a guy who you could very well make an argument is their best player on the roster in DJ Moore. Like, Brian Burns has a conversation,
Close.
J.C. Horn has a conversation, Jeremy Chin has a conversation. DJ Moore is like one of the 2 or 3 best players on their not-so-great roster. That's a haul for Ryan Poles, and shout out to him. Obviously, he was tasked with the decision of, do we want to roll with Justin Fields, who, probably is never going to be the passer that Bryce Young is, but you're definitely not getting the packet. You're not getting 2 firsts, 2 seconds, and a really good wide receiver for Justin Fields. So, I guess the plan is kind of what Philly has done. Surround him with as much talent as you possibly can and just roll with Justin Fields. And they've chose to do that. Now, the choice here becomes, do we want to continue to add talent to that offense, or do we want to look on the defensive side? You've got Devon Witherspoon there, who's, I wouldn't say taking a fall, but
he's still top 10.
I'm pretty sure this is the lowest he's been mocked in a mock draft that I've done. I had him going to Detroit in at least 2 of my mocks.
I've seen him fall into the mid-teens in some, just for like when tackles go way earlier.
Yeah. And that's the flip side of it, is tackle here at number 9. They made no moves to address tackle at all this free agency, which kind of thinks that makes me think that that's where they're leaning. It's going to be not an easy choice for them, but like we saw it in this one. Vegas takes Christian Gonzalez. In mocks that I've done, the Lions have taken Devon Witherspoon. Like, there's a chance that they're sitting there at 9 and there's two corners gone already. Whereas at tackle, can't imagine that they will be having to make some tough decisions at tackle. I think 9 is like where the first tackle will be coming off the board. I don't think it'll be happening any earlier than that. My pick here would be Paris Johnson Jr., just because you want to protect Justin Fields as much as you can. You've addressed wide receiver to a certain degree. You have some pieces in that secondary. You get Kyler Gordon last year in the draft. You also have Jalen Johnson, who showed some flashes to be one of a good young corner. And like I said, you're trying to build this thing around Justin Fields, and I feel like Paris Johnson Jr. is the pick. And, he was his tackle for, I believe, a year, or at least blocked for him. Yeah, blocked for Justin Fields at Ohio State. What do you think?
I think there's a few, you could pretty much do no wrong with the picks of Chicago, because they are a team that's also devoid of talent. Even though they picked up DJ Moore, I wouldn't say receivers are strength. You have Claypool and Mooney and Mooney is a guy I feel like they could dump off for picks because they don't seem to be as in on him as they were last year. So with that being said, I'm down to like three people here, just my guys type of things. Devon Witherspoon, obviously he's here. He's a great corner. I know we took Gonzalez, but him and Gonzalez, you can say them in the same breath and you're flipping a coin. Obviously, Paris Johnson Jr. I have him slightly above Skoronski. Even though you could flip Skoronski inside, they need a tackle. They don't need a guy you can flip inside. Mm-hmm. And then another guy from his alma maters here, put him in the slot.
Oh, boy.
Give him a guy he's comfortable with. I mean, you said it yourself. You can find tackle talent on day 2 in this draft. Even though they aren't at 32 anymore, you're going to be able to find a tackle in the second round. And Jones showed out for them for being a 5th-round pick last year, like a surprising amount. They can put together a decent enough offensive line to look decent with Justin Fields, but it's only going to go as far as the receiving threats can take you. And I know they probably don't want to give up on Claypool this early. Maybe try to trade Mooney if they do this. But I like JSN in this offense. And if it's not him, I could see Paris Johnson Jr. any day.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think we've narrowed it down to JSN and Paris Johnson Jr. because JSN was not on my mind. If I was doing this mock, JSN would probably be much closer to the 20s than he would be at 9. Like, if he doesn't get picked at 9 here, I can't see him going until, like, Seattle, really, at 20.
I'd love that pick, too.
Yeah,
Tennessee's desperate for receivers,
yeah.
but
we don't want to draft with other teams in mind here, but I like the thought of giving him somebody comfortable, but, you go trade for DJ Moore, and then you draft
like Devonta
JSN.
And Jalen Hurts.
It is kind of like that.
A little bit of experience with him.
I understand that, but, God.
This is just one thing that we hadn't thought of before, and it just kind of came to me as we were coming to it because JSN has, neglecting the 40 entirely, insanely boosted his draft stock.
Yeah, I agree.
Because the one knock on him was downfield speed, and he doesn't need that.
And the injuries were also a thing. Like, he obviously missed almost all of last year with that ankle injury, and that's, you need your ankles as a wide receiver. God, you have kind of made this tough. But the thing is, if you draft Paris Johnson here at 9, he's replacing a guy that probably shouldn't be starting for an NFL team. If you draft JSN here, he's replacing a guy in Darnell Mooney who, isn't outstanding by any means, but he is a starting receiver in the NFL. Somebody will trade for him if he's wide receiver 4 on the Bears. Somebody will go out and get him. You don't want to get rid of Claypool because you royally screwed yourself up by trading what is essentially now a first-round pick for Chase Claypool. And then obviously DJ Moore, you're not moving him out of any position.
I just think you're going to be able to find a better tackle in the second round than you are going to be able to find a Jackson Smith and Jigba in the second round.
Whew.
Like a competent starter.
All right, well, let me tell you, dude, this is going to have a ripple effect because, I can't say it's really hard to not plan out some thought. Like, when you're doing a mock draft, it's like, oh, well, if this player gets past here, this team's probably going to be like, oh, I would love that player. If Paris Johnson Jr. doesn't get picked here at 9, are we doing this? Do you want to do this? We're at 45 minutes here, but that's not important. Oh, didn't recap. We'll recap after this.
We'll do it at 10.
Yeah, we'll do it at 10. What do we think? Do we want to go JSN here? As the social media manager, I love this because believe that this is going to get a lot of engagement.
And we're going to get cussed out in the comments.
If you listen to the YouTube,
Smith and Jigba,
I did not just
willing to put my neck on the line for him.
If you're listening to the podcast, why am I saying if you're listening to the podcast on the podcast? We did not just say that. This is totally what we think. We're intelligent people, and we're not just looking for clicks. JSN here at number 9.
I think there's serious buzz for JSN top 10.
I do too. I think it's growing. Yeah.
And I think they just need the explosion on offense. You give him the weapons, and then you build later. Because look at Cincy. They got Jamar Chase. They're building the O-line now. Granted, they look rough
offensive lineman for 3 years.
Look at Cincy. They're doing fine now. You get the elite receiver, and then you worry about it later with the offensive line. You can put pieces together to make it somewhat competent. Last year they kind of stunk, but Lyle Collins fell off the face of the earth and just crashed and burned. But you can put together something and still be a great offense with a bad offensive line. It doesn't have to be completely reliant on that, and that's why I'm leaning receiver now.
Okay. All right. So here at 10, damn. I really want my Steelers to move up. I really do. For Paris Johnson Jr. I think that makes a ton of sense. You have excess draft capital this year.
And Philly loves picks.
Philly loves picks, but the thing is, everything that I've heard
next year
is that they will not let Devon Witherspoon get past 10. Like, they want Devon Witherspoon really, like, they like him a lot. He fits their... But, damn it, they re-signed Darius Slay and James Bradbury.
Let's make the call. I can do a quick trade calculator for you. So, you guys moving up to 10 would be making up 1,300 minus 3. You need 350 points. And 32's 590. Your other one's 410. So, if you do 17 and 49...
Could. All right. Here, let me. We are so prepared on this podcast. There's so much preparation going in.
I was trying to think of potential trades beforehand, and I didn't think of JSN at 9.
Yeah, I was about to say, like,
so that kind of threw a wrench.
I like gave no thought. I was like, Paris Johnson Jr. might have been like the 3 or 4 picks that I could have wrote in before we did anything, and that wouldn't have changed anything for me. So the fact that we're doing this right now really throws a wrench in things. 2/3? Do you think a third this year and a third next year gets it? Because third this year is 190. A third next year would be, you got to imagine 190 is about the middle. Could be around the same thing if you're Philly.
I don't know if they do a third.
If you're Philly and you're moving out.
Because you guys are the ones moving up for the premium.
Yeah.
That's what you got to remember.
Yeah. God, 2/3 though.
But you have 32. You can make up for it. You can get a guy like right at the turn that you need desperately at the position.
And this is why,
because there's going to be good corners there still.
I've wanted us to get a tackle. Like I was team Jordan Addison for a small bit of time as free agency moved along, and we've signed 7 interior offensive linemen for some godforsaken reason. I've become more team tackle at 17 here, and like the Steelers. And I don't want to get on a tangent here because this is the team that I know the best. They have big needs everywhere. They got big need at tackle, big need at corner. I'm sure you've seen corner a lot getting mocked for Pittsburgh. Interior defensive line is quietly becoming a need for them. Cam Hayward is not going to be around forever. And we let our 2, 3, and 4 hit free agency, and Chris Wormley, Tyson Alualu, and Larry Ogunjobi. Larry Ogunjobi we were able to bring back, but we have the picks to get it. That's why I want to do this. That's why I want to do this.
Do you want me to sell you? I see 3 teams ahead of you that need tackle, and the Titans, the Jets, and the Patriots quietly. And I don't think the receiving talent with JSN off the board is going to entice them to take receiver at this point because they don't like taking receiver for whatever reason.
Yeah, and then
I think if you want the tackle,
that's what I was about to say. The other argument is, do we want to tackle or do we want to do a corner? Now, my thought process has been, I know Patrick Peterson's old and I know he's only on a 2-year deal, but we're kind of trying to maximize this winning window with Kenny Pickett, so I want to do that. And having us draft Joey Porter or not Christian Gonzalez, Deontay Banks, and then having him sit behind Patrick Peterson and then running one of our shitty corners out in the slot because we let Cam Sutton go, that's not a winning move right now. So that's why I've been like, we'll dress corner in the second round where we can get like a good slot guy, like a slot-only type of corner, and just play him there. I think we'll do it. Paris Johnson Jr., I think he's the best tackle in this class. And, like, Skoronski would kind of be my pick. Like, I'd definitely be thinking about Skoronski. The only problem is that the reason why I'd want Skoronski is because you can flip him into guard if he's not working at tackle, but we've got so many guards now that it doesn't matter. Like, if we flip him into guard, then we've got a massive hole to tackle again. So let's do it.
I'm seeing a lot of green on this. Oh yeah,
little Pennsylvania trade here.
All right.
Pittsburgh Steelers moving up to number 10. The last time that the storied Pittsburgh Steelers moved up to number 10, the late great Devin Bush was drafted.
Late because his career is over.
Yes, and he's in Seattle.
All right. Tennessee. Broderick or Skoronski? Because that one's kind of... I don't think they're going receiver if JSN's not here.
I'd be leaning
Witherspoon's
Skoronski,
tempting.
just because Skoronski Broderick Jones more of a pass blocker. Skoronski is a good pass blocker too, but you can flip him into guard. They don't really have anything on the offensive line where you'd be like, yep, we're definitely have this spot filled.
Witherspoon's like there, but they're okay at corner even though Farley flopped. I think offensive line's more pertinent at this point because they lost Lawan.
For sure.
So Skoronski.
Yeah, let's go Skoronski here. Let me get the draft board all set up again. What?
I'm Devon Witherspoon and Derek Stingley.
Dude, okay, now we can officially say Devon Witherspoon is falling. Devon Witherspoon is free falling.
Or do they want defensive line because they desperately need defensive line? Or do you not pass up this? Because there is going to be more talent in the second round, like we've mentioned, where you can find players that are good at corner. There's going to be there's a lot of good edges around the turn.
I was about to say, what is the edge like looking at?
I mean, you can get Felix Anudike Uzama, you can get Adetokunbo Adebawore. There's a few guys right around that turn that are going to be nasty, and you're welcome for giving you the pronunciation subtly there.
I'm not going to say it. I'm
Lucas Van Ness could be a guy that goes here because he's traitsy, but he'd be your lead pass rusher, and he's not developed yet. I mean, Will McDonald's right around the turn too. Freak athlete. B.J. Ojulari, just a solid pass rusher. Those are the guys that are going to be there for them around 32 or 33. Sorry.
I don't know, man. I feel like, obviously you need edge rusher. This is a good
or Nolan
class.
Smith, like a hair on fire type of guy.
Yeah.
Just bring motivation to play a defense above the level they're capable of because he's that kind of leadership.
But Derek Stingley, I had him as my either number 1 or number 2 player last year, was not as good as the Texans or, people like me hoped he was going to be last year.
It might have been scheme.
It might have been scheme. Very well could have been scheme, bringing in a predominantly man corner to come in and play for a coach who's been the most known cover 2 runner in the history of the world.
Imagine trying to pass on Witherspoon and Stingley in a man defense.
Imagine how good having them two next to each other is going to make each other. Like having, if one of the two of them pans out, that's going to make the other one pan out because you can't throw to that one side of the field, and both of them are so good, especially like Stingley is so good athletically, has such good man instincts that, if Witherspoon locks off one side of the field, man, you're not getting anything on Stingley when, you know where he's going. So
and corner's just so valuable that it's hard to pass up.
Yeah.
So we going.
I think we're going to go Witherspoon.
Just lock up
the
secondary.
I was about to say you've got now. I know Jimmy Ward's not old, but on the older side. You got one of the best young secondaries in the league now.
P-Tray in there too
as well. All right, Devon Witherspoon falling a little bit.
They got a strength now.
Yeah.
They have a strength now.
Finally,
that's more than we could say last year.
Yeah, that wasn't just one singular player. And honestly, the Texans, the Texans in this world are winning this draft. I mean, obviously, it's really easy to win with 2 picks in the top 12, but you now have, honestly, man, if you're the Texans in this world, if you can find maybe one of those like edge guys that give you a good year or two in round 2, or you maybe get a guy a little bit later in free agency. I don't really know off the top of my head who's available.
I think they still have cap space.
That's a solid
if you want
team, man.
vets, you can get Kyle Van Noy or somebody like that because we haven't re-signed him.
Yeah, wide receiver.
He produces.
I would say for Houston, wide receiver still a need. You definitely need to address that with no Brandon Cooks there. I know you're getting John Mechie back, but
there's some injury-prone guys later in the draft like Tillman and Michael Wilson who are bigger receivers that can be possession guys.
Yeah,
but they come with the injury tag next to them, which is why they fall.
Getting Bryce Young and Devon Witherspoon that's a damn good draft for Houston in a division that's not very strong. Texans might be turning this thing around a little bit quicker than we thought.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
And the Jags have only let people go. So
yeah.
It's not like they're screaming right now. All right, Jets. So are we avoiding the Rodgers trade for now?
We are going to
avoid like a second.
We'll talk about it, even though we are currently sitting at an hour in runtime. We're just going to speed this up, and
some of the stuff's going to be
really
quicker
fast.
In the end anyway.
Yeah, we're just going to speed this up, and it's going to sound really fast and chipmunky. So what we're going to do, and we talked about this a little bit. It's going to be a second. We're not this. In my last one, we had the Packers trading up, or the Jets trading their number one or. Fucking shit. The round 1 pick for Aaron Rodgers. This time we're not going to do that. I think it's going to be a second and some stuff, maybe a conditional pick. Jermaine Johnson is a name that's been floated around as a guy that the Packers wanted last year. The Jets got him right before them, and they're still interested. Jermaine Johnson really wasn't, I wouldn't say didn't pan out for them last year, but wasn't a player that they could say, we're going to build around this guy like a Sauce Gardner, like a Breece Hall, like a Garrett Wilson. So I could very well see him being moved. Corey Davis is another guy that I feel like the reason why he hasn't been cut yet is because he's in this trade conversation for Aaron Rodgers. Corey Davis fits their size threshold in Green Bay. He can come in, be a veteran wide receiver on that team full of young wide receivers. So just for the sake of talking about it, it'll probably be a second, Jermaine Johnson, Corey Davis, and the Jets are still going to be picking here at 13. Now,
Broderick
is the thought. I wish Skoronski was here because
maybe Anton for passing. Who knows? Because he's not an amazing run defender, but he's a better pass blocker, I think. Like, he's such a bad run defender in comparison. He's just undersized.
Yeah. But, I mean, the way that this scheme is run, they still run the ball a lot. Like, even if they get Aaron Rodgers, I still think they're going to, and they've got Breece. I still think they're going to run the ball a sizable amount. So I think Broderick's the pick here. You don't really need a wide receiver, especially with fucking Aaron Rodgers and his list of demands.
Lazard.
Yeah, and Lazard.
Just keep listing off anybody you can think of from Packers history.
Quentin Johnston is the Lazard. Like, is that not like the same player? Really?
Lazard's probably a better blocker.
Yeah. So we're going Broderick here?
Yeah, I think it's pretty safe.
All right, so the tackle run, I mean, at least the top 3 tackles are all gone at 13, which is probably the earliest that I've seen it happen in any of my mocks, at least. So now the Patriots are up here at 14. Those second-tier edge guys are all still here. Lucas Van Ness, Nolan Smith. You've also got Deonte Banks, Joey Porter Jr. are both here. I like Deonte Banks here. I think that scheme fit makes a lot of sense.
Jonathan Jones, right?
But, I mean, you got Jack Jones. Jonathan Jones is a slot-only guy. And you've got Judon. They've just kind of been able to produce pass. Bill Belichick's always going to be able to produce pass rush. And I know it probably hurts Patriots fans to see us pass on a wide receiver here when,
It's just, we're thinking in the mind of Bill Belichick here. Yeah. We know he's not going to do it.
He does not give a shit about.
I'm torn between Porter and Banks because Porter has the freaky long arms and he can be the man corner that they need. But Banks is
the size speed guy. Yeah. And I just feel like I don't know, man. I feel like Banks is the better scheme fit here for them. He's also had success.
They like their Maryland guys.
I also say he's had success with a Terp in the past who is not having so much success with the Chargers.
He's got a patellar tendon rupture. Come on.
Blah, blah, blah. So we going Banks here?
Yeah, I'll go with Banks.
All right, cool.
He's a great corner. I can't argue about either one that much. They're same breath for me.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Green Bay making their first draft pick since letting go of Aaron Rodgers.
I've got 2 in mind here, and one of them it just feels like a Packers pick in Lucas Van Ness. Pick the developmental guy like Rashawn Gary. Or, now that Rodgers is going to be gone, give them Dalton Kincaid and give them a weapon in the middle of the field. You keep Mercedes Lewis around for the run blocking, and then keep Kincaid as the best receiving tight end in this draft.
And look, this might be a little bit of a reach, but instead of having to have two players to do that,
Darnell,
why don't we just
not that good of a
Darnell
receiver? They need the receiving talent more than they need the blocking talent, I think. Even if Kincaid's not that bad of a blocker. You can leave him on the field and then just run big sets and run Dobbs and Watson out wide and then power behind. It would be hilarious to just bring in another Mercedes Lewis at the same time. I feel like we'll manage to get Washington in here at some point. I just think the NFL might want more of the receiving talent of Kincaid. Packers might not be NFL minded, but whatever.
I know that the Packers, I mean, at least off the top of my head, I can't remember the last time the Packers traded down for somebody. But I know it's kind of silly to be trading down with a tight end in mind, especially in a class where tight ends are everywhere. But
who's desperate for?
There are, I guess, Joey Porter Jr. is like the asset to be moving up for right now.
Ooh, Ravens.
For Joey Porter?
They need corner pretty bad. And Banks is gone. They got to get him before the run.
Yeah, because I was about to say, after Porter, you're looking at Cam Smith.
You're looking at second rounders.
You're looking at Emmanuel Forbes, Cam Smith, outside of that, man. And Marcus Peters looks like he's on his way out the door. We're going to have the Ravens continue to ignore the wide receiver position again.
We're sorry, but
it's just not going to...
The depth is okay, but you don't want them starting at CB2 all year. You want to solidify that position because your secondary is your strength.
Okay, this is happening because you cannot have Brandon Stevens running out there guarding,
So they need to move up by about 300 points. Their second round pick is gone. Let me see the fourth. Their fourth is 48. Maybe next year's third.
They have a third?
No.
Damn. Wow.
Actually, they have 86. Sorry,
I was about to say because I feel like they got some comp stuff because they're like the king of comp picks.
But I don't think you want to trade away all your draft assets this year because they have needs. I think it'd be the first this year and a third next year for this pick.
Okay, yeah, I'm with that.
If possible. Let me see if we can make it green. Because it's not a horrible jump. If we need to do a little more, we can do like a late round thing.
Go like a fifth or sixth in there.
Fifth, probably.
Yeah.
That 157 pick. I feel like maybe next year's fifth because they'll probably get a few comps from Calais. Oh, no, wait, they cut Calais. You don't get a comp for that.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of, he's talking to Atlanta right now. So
him and Tyree Wilson on the same defense. That'd be nasty.
Mm-hmm. All right, so again, I feel like maybe just for the sake of time, we've decided that this is going to happen. Compensation we can kind of work out later in the Instagram comments.
Yeah, that works.
Joey Porter Jr. is a Baltimore Raven. That hurts, dude. I'm not the biggest Joey Porter Jr. fan, but like I can't imagine how Joey Porter fucking feels.
He said his dad was a Steeler, but he would gladly be a Raven and honor the tradition because it's a proud franchise, regardless of how his dad feels.
Fuck that shit, then.
All right, what do we have up next? Detroit. Here we go.
Is back on the clock here. They're going to be picking at 6, so we've got a run here of the Ravens who traded up, the Lions who traded back, the Eagles who traded back, and then the Lions who traded back earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever. Lions at 16. You're, I don't really know what to do here. We were talking edge a little bit, and there has been the second tier of edge has not happened yet. So
I don't hate Kancey here because they have a Loon McNeil who can plug up the middle as a pure run defender and send Kancey in to seek for blood. Lucas Van Ness developmental. They kind of need tight end. Miles Murphy, kind of thicker guy who can play the run. I don't hate that for them.
I will say, if we are going to address tight end, I think it's going to be at 18 because the Eagles aren't going to take a tight end. So
yeah,
if
we'd hold off on that.
Let's wait on that. And I'm sorry for the people watching on YouTube. This little screen here in the middle is a screen share. I don't really know what you want to call it, but so whenever I have to move this graphic around to be able to change a color or something like that, it like makes it look stupid because it's like a perfect square right now, and it's like perfectly fits the screen. But when I move it at all, it doesn't. And sometimes like I'll just wiggle my mouse around and it'll fuck the whole thing up. So sorry about that, everybody. Back to the mock draft conversation.
Maybe Branch. No, they have slot guy. They don't need Branch.
Do we want to pair 2 white edge rushers together? Lucas Van Ness?
Maybe.
The corner run is over. So corner's out. There might not be another corner taken in this mock
for a while. No. Maybe right at the turn.
Yeah.
Or do they want to run defender and then bring in Houston for the end? Because Murphy is a guy who can fill his gaps. Nolan Smith, great run defender. He would fit.
I was about to say, I think Nolan Smith makes a lot of sense here.
Campbell.
I think Detroit would like him a lot. Do you want to go? Let's do Nolan Smith.
That's a beautiful one.
Boom.
And they'll be back up soon. Anyway.
Sometimes you just love the pick that you just made, and I think Nolan Smith.
He fits Dan Campbell so well.
All right, Eagles at 17. Now they moved out. They lost a shit ton. They were able to rekindle that secondary, or at least that cornerback duo in Slay and Bradbury when there was a point in time where we thought that they weren't going to be able to bring anybody back. And they brought back 2 of the 3. They did lose Javon Hargrave, so, like, I can't remember if we talked about it pre-show or during the show, but, like, I've seen people have Jalen Carter get mocked to the Eagles at 10. How terrifying would that be? But they're picking at 17 here. I think interior defensive lineman is still a need.
I think I'm 2 guys here, maybe. Either Kalijah for the pass rush or Lucas Van Ness, because Brandon Graham is getting kind of old.
Yeah. See, now, I think Cansey is probably the better fit of what they like to do because you've got Jordan Davis to be a run defender. Kalijah Cansey is, like, I mean, I'm not saying that's his pro comp, but stylistically,
it's not.
They're very, very similar. And like,
but he can pass rush. He's going to be your pass rusher.
Yeah, he's pass rush D lineman, and they don't have a guy like that. And those guys don't really exist, really. Like there's not a whole lot of guys that are that good at pass rushing from the interior. So, do you want to go Kalijah Cansey here?
Either him or no, too frisky to go with Adebawore.
I thought you were going to
he'd be there at 30.
Bijan or some shit. Which we got to start thinking about that. I know that's
running back.
That's like a big
because
thing.
Rashad Penny is a guaranteed injury. He might be us. I don't know if Eckler's going to be with us.
That's good. We're not drafting
that'll be
other teams right now, but let's do Kalijah Cansey. Do we?
I like Cansey to know.
Cansey? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So now the Lions are back on the clock here. We talked about tight end. With the last one, we haven't seen a tight end come off the board yet, so they have.
They might need a big receiver too because there's no more DJ Chark there.
Yeah.
J-Mo's the downfield guy, but they don't have a big go up and get it guy, which would be Quentin.
Yeah. So
I'm not sold on it, but
okay. So if you're Detroit, you've acquired in this draft. You've acquired Montez Sweat. Fuck! They acquired Montez Sweat, Mitchell.
Oh yeah. Oh well. We'll ignore it. Nolan Smith is.
Do we want to ignore it though?
You can drop him into coverage. You load up and you trade out for. You can probably trade Houston for a decent amount, I think. They were pretty strapped for edge defenders and in and out guys. That's my only issue. We could have done Miles. Oh, well. I don't think they needed Cansey. Cansey was probably not the guy they were looking for.
All right.
They were pretty strapped
Let's
here.
quickly switch this to Miles Murphy because he can play inside, outside. Montez Sweat is outside only.
Mm-hmm.
Nolan Smith is also probably outside only. Let's quickly, sneakily switch this to Miles Murphy. God, if we made cuts on this podcast, man, you guys would miss this excellent content of us realizing that we have just double selected a position here.
It's hard to see Montez Sweat pop up when it's in very small print when we scroll up.
We aren't thinking about that. Let's make sure we didn't do any other player
I don't think
trades.
the Eagles would have drafted. No, we had 2 picks in between. That was it.
We got the Jets picking. They're going to move up here for Will Levis. So, all right, Detroit again here.
So what are we thinking? We got to remember Nolan Smith's on the board going forward.
Yes, you're right. Nolan Smith is Miles Murphy on our board.
Nolan Smith. Okay, we remember that. All right. Is this a tight end pick?
I was about to say, that's kind of where I'm leaning. Do you like Kincaid here?
I think Kincaid's a better receiver, but
they even have a block.
There's a large man that you brought up earlier that might be a more Dan Quinn fit. Campbell.
They get their Georgia guy that we just took from them. I like Darnell. I like Darnell.
He fits him.
I like Darnell.
He fits him.
All right, Leah, let's do it.
All right, let's do him.
Ball.
That is going to be graded an F on PFF's mock board, but hey.
I was about to say,
he's ranked
Darnell
70th, I think?
Yikes.
72nd? I think is what it said.
I might make some cuts to cut out the fact that you just said that, but other than that, I mean.
It's PFF's opinion, not ours.
Okay. He pushed that damn fucking blocking thing really far, so he's a good player. Darnell Washington to the Lions at 18. Tampa Bay, they're in a really shitty spot because they have no money. They really don't have a quarterback. They've got a flyer on Baker.
They don't have a lot.
They traded Shaq Mason. They cut Donovan Smith. So now you're looking at, and Ali Marpet retired him, right? So.
Oh, yeah, he did retire last
now looking
season.
at a line with Ryan Jensen, who's really old, coming off of what was I believe to be a season-ending injury, and Tristan Wirfs.
That moves out all the guys that are locked in at right tackle. So no DeWand, no Darnell Wright. You still have Anton who can play left, though.
Yeah.
It's either, I think it's him, Nolan Smith, a.k.a. Miles Murphy,
yes.
or Lucas Van Ness. Because I don't think their secondary is
Lucas Van Ness, I think, because you got to think, man, Shaq
Barrett. But they just took the project guy and try on Shoinka, and it's not, paying off.
So do we want to do Nolan Smith here? Because
I like Nolan there.
I like Nolan. You guys think Shaq Barrett also coming off of a season-ending injury, and he's going to be 31 this year, believe it or not. So Nolan Smith going to Tampa Bay, and now Seattle back on the clock here. They picked Jalen Carter at number 5. We did not do we'll do a recap after 20.
We'll do it after
I swear to God if you don't remind me.
We actually will.
All right.
So 20.
This would be the JSN spot if you didn't do something outlandish.
I think he's going to be before 20 at this point anyway. I think somebody will bite on him before then.
Do we think there's any other receiver that we think makes sense here?
Slot guys, so
yeah.
I think Zay is a little more experienced on the outside. Addison, maybe. It might be a bit of a
I was about to say Addison. I can't see him getting picked in the top 20 anymore.
They don't have tight end.
Yeah.
They have a bunch of guys they just throw in and it works.
Do we have anything? Who do they have on the edge now? Because we
a
still
bunch
have,
of small guys.
I was about to say
Lucas Van Ness.
Lucas Van Ness is
He's
here.
a big dude, more prototypical size. He'd fit in with Chenna, Boye. Why do I always forget the other guy? But they need a power guy. They don't have a power guy.
Darryl Taylor. Yeah.
Darryl Taylor. That's what I'm getting at.
Lucas Van Ness will be rocking with that.
I like that. More power.
All right.
And that defensive line was their weakness last year. You sure it up with Carter and him.
I was about to say, you
probably
might be looking at a strength.
Yeah.
All right. The old 2/3 mock draft recap here.
It'll help us remember our trades we've made.
Yeah. The Panthers stayed at not stayed. We're off to a terrible start. The Panthers picked C.J. Stroud first overall. The Texans then took Bryce Young. The Cardinals stayed at 3. They took Will Anderson. The Colts got their quarterback in Anthony Richardson. Seattle took their shot on Jalen Carter. The Commanders moved up with the Detroit Lions, trading away this year's number 16, a first-round pick next year, and Montez Sweat for number 6 and a second-round pick in this year's class to pick Will Levis. The Raiders got Christian Gonzalez at 7. The Falcons got Tyree Wilson at 8. The Bears, shocking the world, picking Jackson Smith and Jigba at 9. The Steelers move up with the Philadelphia Eagles at number 10. They're going to give up their number 17 pick and the number 49 pick in this year's class for number 10, and they're going to select tackle Paris Johnson Jr. The Titans then take Peter Skoronski at 11. The Texans get Devon Witherspoon at 12. The Jets get Broderick Jones at 13. The Patriots get Deontay Banks at 14. The Ravens move up to 15 with the Packers to get Joey Porter Jr. They give up a first in this year's class, which was number 23 or 22. We'll talk about the tampering situation here in a second. And a third-round pick next year to come up to 15, grab Joey Porter Jr. The Lions, from where they moved back with the Commanders, they're going to take Miles Murphy here at 16. And then the Eagles, where they moved back with the Steelers, they're going to take Kalijah Cansey. The Lions get a kneecap biter in Darnell Washington. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers draft Nolan Smith. And Seattle gets Lucas Van Ness at 20, which brings us to the 21st pick. Where my Miami Dolphins are going to select Tom Brady here at number 21, or the prospect of potentially adding Tom Brady onto their roster.
Clearly, that is going to work out for them.
Unfortunately, he is retired, so they will be drafting no one here, which, and this is confusing. Shout out to fucking Bills Mafia like 873 or something in our Instagram comment section, pointing out the fact that the Bills are not picking at 28th. They're actually picking at 27th. I guess he failed to realize that the Dolphins are selecting tampering at 21, which as a result, 7 picks later, the Bills are picking 28th instead of 27th.
Ruins the graphics.
I was going to say, just for the sake of the graphic. That. I remember when that first happened, I was like, fuck, that's going to ruin all my graphics.
Plus, it's nice to remember that they screwed themselves trying to get Tom Brady.
Mm-hmm. Always nice to good old Dolphins.
Miserably.
Chargers, your Los Angeles Chargers, the proud LA Chargers, are going to be picking here at 22, and this is the Bijan spot, right? We kind of have to do this, right?
Or is there a team in Dallas that might be looking for running back in the future?
I don't understand that. Like, I understood it, the hype around it when, look, they hadn't cut Zeke at that point, but it kind of felt like that's where they're leaning, and Tony Pollard was an impending unrestricted free agent. But you just franchise tag Tony Pollard.
For 1 year.
This team does feel like
they're going, a lot cheaper.
They feel
they
like
have
they're
salary
going
cap
all in.
This year, but not going forward. You got to remember that. They need the cheap guy, and Pollard's not going to be that. And at 21, Bijan's going to be a lot cheaper than if he were to go like 10. And you get the 5th year. You can keep him on for the 5 years, establish the run again, because they still have a good offensive line. It's got to be.
I mean, if you're the Chargers, man, how can you sit there and be like, "Yep, we don't want this guy"? After
being who's going to pay Austin Eckler $12 million like he wants? Realistically,
but guess what?
He's probably going to be back.
Yeah, but if he might be back for this year, he might not be back after that. Like,
that's why
you never really know.
Day 2 is amazing in this draft.
Day 2 is
Don't
amazing.
Don't forget that. It's not Bijan, but
if you pair, like, I know that you just made that argument for the Cowboys, but the Chargers also going to be getting very expensive over the next few years. Austin Eckler is going to be the expensive guy. It's literally the exact same situation that you have.
Nothing next year.
Yeah. Literally the exact situation that you have in Dallas, except the Chargers are the ones that are picking here, not the Cowboys. And if you compare Bijan Robinson in there with Justin Herbert, like, this is a guy who he can catch passes too. We're not drafting Derrick Henry here. Like, this is a guy that can do it all. Is the comp that a lot of people are giving him. So LaDainian Tomlinson.
Yeah. I'll buy the jersey if we draft him. It's just, I feel like the Dallas Cowboys are probably in their push now.
They are in their push now, but you guys are also in your push. You need to be. You're about to start paying Herbert.
But I don't think we are. That's the only issue. We did everything we could to be able to fill out an active roster at this point. I'll bow down.
Thank you.
It could be tight end. Remember that.
This is
but
also
we'll take
a great tight end class. You can get tight ends later too.
Solid ones, yeah. Like Zach Kuntz from Old Dominion? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
or
think
James
about
Madison,
it. We're this far into the draft, and there's only one gone so far. Obviously, this isn't going to be perfect, but
the next one probably
is there. There will probably be at least 1 or 2 coming off the board throughout the next couple picks. Very well could be one coming off the board right now. Green Bay Packers up here at 23. We were talking about Dalton Kincaid at 15. Darnell Washington's gone. God bless. But they could still grab Dalton Kincaid here at 23 after moving back. You've also got Quentin Johnson. You got Michael Mayer on the board. You've got Quentin Johnston here. Brian Branch, I think, would make some sense here. Adrian Amos getting up there. Darnell Savage has really not been good since his rookie season. You got a lot of options here for Green Bay. There's a lot of players here that are available that are at positions of need.
All right. So I think Branch is falling at this point for
that's kind of
overall consensus. One of the two tight ends, the top two guys left, or Green Bay's another one of those guys who goes for toolsy people that aren't quite ready yet, which would be one of the guys in the second round.
Yeah. And
I'm probably this is gonna be the point where I start pushing for Adetomiwa Adebawore. But they don't need interior guys as much on there, and
yeah, and then you just took one last year,
guy.
And even last year I was like, Jesus Christ, they're taking an interior guy.
Maybe a Will McDonald type guy, speed edge rusher, but Rashawn Gary's there.
Yeah, and you've still got. I mean, I know you're not going to have him around forever, but Preston Smith is still there as well.
We feeling Kincaid?
I was about to say, for me, it's between Kincaid and Brian Branch.
I'm feeling Kincaid. They might try to stack up Love. Because Love's early in his career, you're going to give him weapons while you got the chance on that rookie deal.
Totally with that. Dalton Kincaid to Green Bay. Finally, the Packers address a offensive weapon in the first round. Unfortunately, Aaron Rodgers is a New York Jet. So,
sayonara.
To hell with him.
All right.
The Minnesota Vikings here at 24. We had been going, I think in your one you did the guy with the very inconvenient last name to say out loud.
Interior and corner.
I think we're sleeping on wide receiver here.
Oh,
Adam
yeah,
Thielen is
gone,
now
man.
a Carolina Panther, and
Osborne
your wide receiver 2 is
stepped up
KJ Osborne, and your wide receiver 3 is what, Rager? In an offense with Kirk Cousins, you kind of want to be thinking about...
Could be a sneaky QB pick, but I'm not going to go there in this one.
Hendon Hooker, come on down.
Stetson Bennett, first round. So, receiver or interior? So, we got Q, we got Brzee, we got Adebawore probably, Flowers, Addison, Amadiku Uzama, Mozzie Smith. I don't think they're a Mozzie Smith type of suitor. He's so unpolished.
Yeah.
Probably even less than Adebawore.
I'm kind of leaning Quentin Johnston here.
Big Q. I can see that.
I think he can kind of figure out the whole high pointing the ball because I'm taller than the player that's guarding me situation.
Got the speed too.
Yeah, and like they've hit on a wide receiver in this spot. Like I think they picked Jefferson at 21, something like that.
It was 21, 22, somewhere right around.
So
I'd go with Q.
Yeah,
that's a good duo to have.
Yeah, and that's been, I mean, not an extreme, like you haven't had extreme success, but generally, having two really good wide receivers in this offense has been a winning formula. I feel like if you have Kirk Cousins next year with just Justin Jefferson, it's going to be a train wreck. So
yeah. Oh, and Jacksonville Jaguars need a DB. Unfortunately, Brian Branch has fallen right into their lap and can
look at that.
Pretty much play.
I'm pretty sure I've done that in the past. I don't want to check it because then everybody's going to be.
I'd say that's an easy
share screen, but Brian Branch to Jacksonville. All right, so now that was the two best players on the PFF board.
That were left, yeah.
Yeah. Quentin Johnston was 9, and Brian Branch was 14, and they got him 24-25. So good value according to PFF for the Vikings and the Jags. Now, the Giants are back up here.
Scratch tight end off that list of needs on PFF.
Yeah, yeah.
Linebacker would be a reach. Center would be a reach, but not horrible. I feel like the centers are pretty good and probably a little underrated here.
So you're looking at, I think John Michael Kuntz is like the only guy you're talking about first round wise, and even then you're really having a conversation.
Got Zay and Jordan Addison, but how redundant are they with Wandale, who you just spent a second round pick on last year?
Sorry. I think Zay could fit here.
Worst comes to worst, Osiris Torrance up here, guard.
That's another
Steve
thing.
Avila.
I like Osiris Torrance a lot.
He'd be great with Saquon. Big body guy, just stout up the line.
What is their guard situation?
They got rid of Feliciano, I think.
Obviously, they've got two top 5 tackles.
Yeah.
Inside.
I think they could use anything. I don't think they'd be that
The
bad
thing
off.
is this is tough. It's definitely between Osiris Torrance and wide receiver of choice for me, in my mind.
I'm going to look at their depth chart real quick, just to be sure I'm not missing any guards or anything.
Yeah.
So they got Glowinski.
They got Azu,
Jack Anderson.
Right?
Yeah, they don't have a lot of guards.
So do we want to go Osiris Torrance here and just continue to not screw Daniel Jones over, but watch him throw to Isaiah Hodgins? All right, so Osiris Torrance here. The Gators have 2 players with the last name Torrance in this class. They're the only team with a player with the last name Torrance in this class, weirdly enough. That's just the kind of information that you won't get from any other podcast right there.
Just next level reporting.
Yeah.
All right, so
Dallas Cowboys, the all-in team, most all-in team of all time right here, just lost their tight end in a great tight end class.
There is a tight end available here.
I think Michael
And
Mayer,
they do need interior stuff, and there's a last name.
Yeah, I mean, let's see here.
I feel like receivers not as bad off as they need, and Cooks is so redundant with the guys they have available.
You just got Cooks. I feel like you're not taking a wide receiver, at least in the first round. If you take one,
not these
2,
receivers. 3,
yeah. If you take one second, third, that's fine because you do need a guy like Brandon Cooks is not going to be here forever. But I think
they have Gallup still.
Honestly, yeah, and you do have Gallup. Shit, I've completely. He always slips my mind because all year the conversation has been, oh my god, they have no wide receivers outside of CeeDee Lamb and Gallup, who
they're paying $70 million. I think.
I was about to 62 and a half, something like that. Yeah,
paying him a ton.
I'm probably leaning Michael Mayer here. Like interior defensive line.
Jake Ferguson, who's solid. He was pretty solid.
Yeah.
They have a knack for finding late tight ends.
Go call Calais Campbell, though, and just be like, you know what? You fix this.
Yeah, but he's more expensive. I think it's between Brzee and Adebawore. Because Adebawore could be filthy on the inside.
I am team give Dak everything. And we've seen how bad he's been without everything.
Mayer's like a red zone guy, I feel like. He's not great in the open field. If it was Kincaid, I wouldn't be second guessing. He'd be gone here. Linebacker, bleh. That'd be bleh pick. We're not taking linebacker in the first.
Funnily enough, the last time they drafted an off-ball linebacker, he became a Defensive Player of the Year candidate, edge rusher. So,
if only he was still doing that, they wouldn't have a need there.
Yeah. They'd also be picking at probably like 15.
All right. So, are we going Mayer or are we going with Adebawore? One or the other. Because I'm going to... There's definitely a spot for Mayer in the first still. There's a spot for both of them, I think, because people just need talent at the end of this. You're just looking for steal. Oh, God. There's a team that I think would fit. Yeah, let's just go Mayer because I'm seeing a team that would fit him pretty well.
Even though we definitely do not draft with other teams in mind. That is not what's happening.
Definitely not.
Please do not think that that's...
Mayer blue chip tight end guy here.
Yeah. And I think he just feels like a Cowboy. Was like supposed to be a top 8 pick or something like that. Went to Notre Dame. Yeah, he just feels like a guy that like the Cowboys would like. All right, Buffalo here at 28.
I'm saying
I'm
right, actually. They need a right tackle. Pretty bad.
Yeah, you're right. Okay.
And I like right a little more than DeJuan Jones.
What about because can Harrison flip the right?
He's
still here. Yeah, you're right. And
he's good. Don't get me wrong. But
yeah, because they have not.
I think they want the body.
They've gone big tackles recently, at least off the top of my head. Darnell Wright here to the Bills at 20.
And Anton is pretty good. I will say he's worthy of. Ooh. So who do we want for Cincy then?
Now,
I think Wright's pushed.
I was going to say not that if I didn't push so hard for Michael Mayer, this would be the Michael Mayer spot because they let Hayden Hurst go. They haven't really addressed it.
And this would be the Darnell Washington spot if he was also here.
This would also be the Dalton Kincaid spot if he was here.
Yes. I mean, Brazil's kind of fallen into their lap. Adebawore, they need interior. Their interiors,
because what they have,
they need
Reader,
safety though.
I just can't see them going safety / slot corner for the second year in a row. Like I know Dax Hill was not good, but
they could go straight up corner, and then just send Dax back if needed as a free safety.
What are we thinking? Forbes, Cam Smith,
Tyreek Stevenson, Cam Smith. You could really, 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 really reach and get Juju Brents, who's press corner type of guy, big arm length. I think him and Porter Jr. both had 34-inch arms, which were the longest of the corners.
Mm-hmm.
Keely Ringo, if you're really digging down too. They have a lot of versatility here. I don't know if they're going to go.
They can go a lot of spots. I think tackle is like done.
At this point, it's just if a guy you love is here. I don't think they're going receiver quite yet because Boyd's got 1 year left, right?
Yeah.
And Higgins has 1 year
left.
And
we haven't, because me and old Rob G and
could be contingent.
Yeah, told me that T. Higgins is not getting traded. So, fortunately, T. Higgins is going to be around here.
You do you, boo. You do you.
Yeah.
I'm going to force the Adebawore pick if we're not going.
All right.
DB.
All right, that's cool with me. Oh, my God, I don't want to type this in. Okay, here we go. Let me,
copy and paste.
Fucking Christ.
I liked him better than the Saints, but
you might need to talk for like a couple minutes here, so I want to get this right. I want to respect the man.
Added to meanwhile, Adebawore, freak athlete, probably going to flip to the inside. He was an edge in college, wasn't as productive at that position, but he's 6'2", 282. I think he had 34-inch arms, something even longer potentially, and he ran a 4.49. And everybody was hyping up Kalijah Kancey breaking the IDL 40-yard dash record at 4.69. He weighs 2 pounds less than Adebawore. And Adebawore is potentially going to be at the same exact position and ran 0.2 of a second faster than him in the 40-yard dash, absolutely shattering what would have been the interior defensive line 40-yard dash record. So this guy is just an athletic freak. I think if you can manage to build him into the position a little better, get him used to it, he could be an absolute menace in the NFL.
Yeah. I like, now that I'm sitting here thinking about it, I like interior D-line for them. I think, obviously, with the way the interior defensive line market is headed, these guys are going to become much more expensive. They have a guy that could be expensive in the near, and I believe he's a free agent next year, and DJ Reader. He's probably going to be demanding upwards of $20 million, and when you're paying Burrow, Higgins, Chase, whoever else, you can't pay that. Like, that's just not a luxury that you can afford. So getting a guy who is an athletic freak and has the potential to be, a really, really good guy on the interior, is nice here. And like I said, if the tight end thing did not fall the way it did, I'd probably be pushing for tight end here. Just the 3 guys that I like the most are gone. So
yeah,
is what it is.
It'd be way too big of a reach if you went for anybody else. Yeah.
Moving on to New Orleans here at 30. This is the Brian Bresee spot for me. They lost a lot on the interior this offseason. I think they let 4 guys go from their interior defensive linemen. And, I mean, even Cam Jordan's still there. He's not going to be around forever. Offensively, I can't think of a need that a pressing need that they have.
They could flip Penning to right tackle and put Anton at left. Because Anton's probably more shirt up left tackle, and Penning has just got that nasty streak you want to right tackle.
I suppose, but man,
they also need edge too, because Cam Jordan is no spring chicken anymore.
Yeah,
and they don't have a lot working for them now that Davenport's gone.
That's the thing. They have Cam Jordan is like the only defensive lineman they have. At least they have him there. They don't have anybody on the interior. Like I don't know if they have a player from last year.
Bresee, Onidike Uzama, or Ojulari. And Ojulari is like the safest of these guys, I think. Bresee has the upside to be good.
I like Bresee a lot. Like, I think, he obviously he had a lot off the field. Yeah, I'm pretty sure his sister died, something like that. And I irrationally love.
I can get the inside scoop from my friend who knows him.
Number one player. Please do. Ask him what he thinks about going to the Saints at 30.
He'd kill me. He wants him at 20 or earlier.
I've got this irrational love for players that were like really, really, really good in high school. And
5 stars.
If I'm not mistaken, he was the number one player in high school, or at least in the top 5 in his class.
He was.
So
I'd say we get him in here.
I think a lot of his best football is still ahead of him, and that could be like not your Cam Jordan replacement, but a guy who's a New Orleans Saint for 8-10 years and just is always super productive for you coming from the interior. So Brian Bresee to the Saints, and honestly, the reason why I'd be doing that, well, I guess they got Kalijah Kancey. I was about to say to avoid him going to Philadelphia, but Philadelphia, they got Kalijah Kancey after trading back with the Steelers, so that Javon Hargrave spot has been filled. And are we flipping to offense now? I think safeties. What about safeties? Because obviously you lose Chauncey Gardner-Johnson.
Far.
Yeah, you lose Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. You also lose Marcus Epps, who missed only 5 snaps for you last year.
It's kind of an iffy safety class. It's not amazing.
It's not a really good spot for them to need a safety.
They could always look for a slot receiver. You could try to bring in Addison as a guy in the middle of the field. Something like that. Him, Zay.
Really,
or stack up at edge. Like I said, Brandon Graham I think he's 34 this year.
You've got Graham. You've got Sam Reddick. He's
got 1 year left on the deal after this year.
Because it was a short deal. Huh.
Oh, they could get Ojulari too. Corner would be a later pick at this point, I think, unfortunately. They could go like Steve Avila. Get a guy on the interior, replace Sayamalu. Or try to force in Cam Jurgens.
I was about to say, I think you're bringing
You'd
Cam
have to force
Jurgens.
him in, though. You have 3 guys you drafted as centers, in Kelsey, Jurgens, and Landon Dickerson.
It worked with Dickerson, though.
You could.
It worked. I mean, surely it will work again.
I think Jurgens is the goal to be the next center up.
Yeah, and I do think that next year, like if he's a guard this year, next year when Kelsey retires, which you got to imagine that's probably going to be after this season, Jurgens will move back into center because Dickerson has been so successful at guard that you don't really want to mess that up. And when you have a guy at center like Cam Jurgens, but I think I like Ojulari here. Because they always, like, that's been their thing for the last 10 years, whether they've been good, bad, they've been to Super Bowls, they've been picking at the top of the draft. They've always had a good pass rush, and they've always had a stable of guys that you can just rotate in and out. And
he's the soundest guy.
That stable's kind of running dry, and BJ Ojulari is the soundest guy that's available at this point. So let's go BJ Ojulari here for the Philadelphia Eagles. And lastly, the Super Bowl champion, Kansas City Chiefs. We're gonna sneak in under 2 hours. I mean, we're cruising under 2 hours.
We started we're at hour 45.
We were at pick 6 with 36 minutes in, and we have done the next 25 picks in a little bit over an hour. Look at us go, man. Look at us go. Kansas City Chiefs, what are we thinking need-wise for them here? Wide receiver kind of talks to me a little bit. I have a weird feeling that they're going to end up with Odell. I just have a gut feeling that they're going to get him. I know, like, Baltimore's in there. I know now the Jets are in that conversation. I just feel like they're the team that takes that chance, especially you lost Juju and you didn't really bring anybody else in. I thought that they were going to get Adam Thielen, to be honest with you. Yeah, but, like...
Yeah, you can't rely on him.
I was about to say, are we really rolling in there with Tony and Marquez Valdez-Scanning, who weigh like a combined 300 pounds? So let's add another wiry wide receiver because that's really all that's left.
So is Lucas Niang still there, or do they need tackle? Because I know they just signed Juwan Taylor.
Niang's still there. They're gonna flip Taylor to
Taylor's
left.
Gonna be left.
Yeah.
I'm not huge on that, but I guess we can look. D-line, they lost Clark.
You got Karlaftis last year though. Is there like Will McDonald's here?
No, Will McDonald's way different than him. He's straight.
God, I wish we could flip Anton Harrison to fucking right tackle. That would be fantastic.
I mean, you could throw in DeJuan Jones, and then he's boom. There you go. You're right back to Orlando Brown Jr., but like 6 inches taller and 100 pounds heavier.
Yeah. I mean,
All right,
there
I'm
are
between
worse
McDonald
things.
and Jones if we're really set. If you want to have a contingency plan and Niang is not cutting it for you, you want the fifth year on a tackle, so you
I
stay
mean,
cheap
just
at it.
sit there and think about, like, on that line now, we went from, 2 or 3 years ago, where they had nothing that you could call him, but you now have $80 million tackle, 15 or 16 or 16 a year, whatever. I don't know what his contract is left. For Joe Tooney, you got a borderline All-Pro guy in Creed Humphrey.
He is all pro.
I was about to say another borderline All-Pro guy in Trey Smith. I think he wasn't as good this year as he was in his rookie year, but still.
No, he had a little fall off.
Pretty solid, and then another first-round tackle in DeJuan Jones. So
You build around Patrick Mahomes, you build around him cheap.
you got to.
I say DeJuan Jones. You can try to establish a run with a guy this size.
True.
Freakishly huge.
And he might not be like the safest floor guy, but dude, if he can be like anything,
he'll put people on the floor.
Yeah, I was about to say his athletic upside is bananas. All right, I know we just went over this fucking 10 minutes ago now, since how fast we're moving, but
it was 11 picks.
Yeah, we're gonna go top to bottom here. C.J. Stroud to Carolina at 1, Bryce Young to the Texans at 2. The Cardinals pick Will Anderson at number 3. At number 4, the Colts take Anthony Richardson. Number 5, the Seahawks take Jalen Carter. At number 6, the Commanders, after trading up with the Lions, they let go of Montez Sweat, another first-round pick next year, and this year's first to get Will Levis. Christian Gonzalez to the Raiders at 7. Tyree Wilson to the Falcons at 8. Jackson Smith and Jigba to the Bears at 9. The Steelers move up to get Paris Johnson Jr. The Titans get Peter Skoronski at 11. The Texans get Devon Witherspoon at 12. The Jets get Broderick Jones at 13. The Patriots take Deontay Banks at 14. The Ravens move up with the Packers to get Joey Porter Jr. at 15. The Lions, from where they moved back with Washington, are going to draft Miles Murphy. The Eagles, from where they moved back with the Steelers, are going to take Kalijah Kancey. The Lions are going to get Darnell Washington at 18. The Bucs get Nolan Smith at 19. The Seahawks get Lucas Van Ness at 20. The Dolphins get no one. The Chargers get Bijan Robinson at 22. The Packers get Dalton Kincaid at 23. The Vikings get Quentin Johnson at 24. The Jags get Brian Branch at 25. Osiris Torrance goes to the Giants at 26. Michael Mayer goes to the Cowboys at 27. The Bills take Darnell Wright at 28. Oh, dear God. The Bengals at 29 are going to take Adetomiwa Adebaworiye.
Close.
Close.
Enough.
I'll take close. All respect to the guy. I don't mean to sound like an ass because I can't pronounce his name. I just can't pronounce his name.
Well, everybody in the world trying to pronounce it sounds rough until you practice it enough.
Yeah. At number 30, Brian Bresee to the Saints, and the Eagles are going to get B.J. Ojulari at 31, and then the last pick is going to be DeJuan Jones to the Chiefs at 32. That's going to wrap it up for our mock draft.
Leaving Jordan Addison at number 33 to the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Even though we will be, because we traded that second round pick, we will not be able to.
I'll just take the Miami forfeited pick out and do first pick, second round.
Dude, I honestly thought about, just make an entire separate graphic and it's just the Steelers block at 33 or whatever. And it's that's the only pick that matters. You know what? For the hell of it, we're still here. Do we go Jordan Addison or do we go corner at 32, quote unquote?
Ooh. Cam Smith or
Jordan Addison?
Juju Brents, maybe.
The IDL
Jordan Addison or
the IDL board kind of got screwed with board.
There's a few okay guys. You could play Tuli Tulopi from USC. He's 290, so he can flip in and out. You'll have don't have 2 picks there anymore, but there's some guys in the third that are good corners still.
Yeah.
So you could definitely find somebody there. I wouldn't worry as much about corner. Either take Jordan to give Kenny his guy or maybe reach for corner.
We'll take Jordan Addison for those that are still listening. But that's going to wrap it up for this episode. Dare I even say we're going to try and be more consistent with content here. The old spiel that is unfortunately probably not going to be true. I'm bleeding my way through calculus right now. Mitchell's in medical school, and Kane's on track to graduate early, so maybe he's the guy. And then Tyler's doing his own thing. Let me plug the at North Pole Pod, doing a lot of March Madness college basketball content. So be sure to go check that out on Instagram at North Pole Pod, and then on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, it should be the North Pole or North Pole Podcast, something along those lines. But definitely be sure to check that out. But for myself, Jaden Kozak, and Mitchell McDonald, this has been a very fun episode.
Wait.
Hey, what?
North Pole, Poll.
Yes.
Important.
That's an
Important
excellent
there.
point. Pole as in like...
Doing a pole,
pole.
not going to the North act, not an actual like pole dance or anything like that.
That's an excellent point. Pole dance was the example that you chose there.
First thing that came to mind, not flagpole.
Jesus,
Pole
man.
dance.
Come on. That's not very American of you. All right. That's going to do it for us. So, for the second time, for myself, Jaden Kozak, and for Mitchell McDonald, thank you guys for listening. Go check us out on Instagram. Peace.